Hey guys, Omaha here. Today I'm going over the Gloomstalker Assassin Multiclass build for Baldur's Gate 3. This is easily one of the most powerful multiclass builds, even for Honor mode. And we're going to cover everything from leveling to gear. And then at the end, I'll show you guys a quick combat example. So make sure you guys drop a like if you enjoy this video. Let's get into it. All right, so this is actually the multiclass build I've been using on my Honor mode playthrough in a multiplayer session. And because I'm not the host, I'm not able to access that at any time. So I can't show you my specific character, but I'm going to guide you through the choices that I chose. And that was for a dual wield melee crit build, which I thought sounded a lot more fun than a ranged build, but I'll also guide you through what to choose if you want to do a ranged build, which is arguably more powerful, especially if you go the dual hand crossbow route. Now, first thing you're going to do is choose your origin. I chose custom. I joined a little bit late in my playthrough. I joined right after the Nautiloid, so I wasn't able to choose the Dark Urge, but having the choice, I probably would choose the Dark Urge solely for this cloak right here, which you get in Act 1. I'm not going to spoil it for you in case you want to go through that and you haven't yet. The Dark Urge playthrough is probably the best way to play the game in my opinion. So yeah, you'll choose custom or Dark Urge preferably. Then we'll go into race. And for mine, since I'm doing melee, I chose the half orc. So what you'll get with that is 30 feet of base movement speed. That's pretty standard. You'll get dark vision up to 40 feet, so you don't have disadvantage if you can't see in the dark. Then you'll get relentless endurance. If you reach 0 hit points, you regain 1 hit point instead of becoming downed, and that's once per long rest. So that comes in handy, especially with the melee build, since you're not going to be the tankiest of characters. And then the thing we're really looking forward to is savage attacks. Since I'm going for crits here, when you land a critical hit with a melee weapon attack, you deal an extra dice of weapon damage. So that's what I was kind of going for. If you're going ranged, I would probably say to go the halfling and go lightfoot halfling. That'll give you advantage on stealth checks. And then you also get the other bonuses of having advantage against being frightened. And then if you roll a 1 on an attack, roll ability check or saving throw, you can re-roll the die and use the new roll. You'll get a little bit less movement speed, but since you're ranged, it doesn't matter as much in my opinion. And then if you're looking for something else, some other good options are half elf. You go wood elf for the 35 feet of movement speed, or you go the drow and you get 80 feet of dark vision. But what I chose was half orc, so we'll go with that for now. You go to your class. The first thing you're going to want to choose is the ranger. I think going into the ranger first is better, especially on the harder difficulties like honor mode. And what that's going to give you is proficiencies in simple weapons and martial weapons, and then armor. You got light armor, medium armor, and shields. Moving on to the favorite enemy, the one I chose was bounty hunter, and I think this is probably the best one to choose. What this will give you is proficiency in investigation. That doesn't really matter as much, but creatures you hit with ensnaring strike, either ranged or melee, have disadvantage on their saving throw. So you're going to be able to keep them ensnared, which will give you advantage on attacks, which is huge for both you and your allies. And really the other options to me just aren't nearly as beneficial as that one. All right, the next thing you're going to choose is your natural explorer. For me, the best choice here was clearly urban tracker. So this gives you proficiency in sleight of hand, which is huge because you're going to be the guy stealing everything. In our playthrough, we've bought maybe 1 or 2 things through the whole playthrough. I've been able to steal almost everything from all the merchants pretty easily, just by collecting certain sets of gear and then putting them on and taking them off after I'm done stealing. So saves you a lot of money that way. That's the route I went. Okay, now moving on to background. Typically, if you're going a stealthy character, you'd want to choose urchin, but since we already have urban tracker, which gives us proficiency of sleight of hand, these aren't going to stack. And so in that case, I would go criminal to give you the stealth and deception. And deception is going to come in handy if you do get caught stealing. You can deceive your way out of it. But if you did want to go urchin, you could change your natural explorer over to beast tamer and you can get find familiar. Or even if you want to get a resistance to one of these, you could also do that. And then next, we're going to move on to our ability points. So this is what it's going to default to. I'll show you guys what I chose. It's kind of min-maxy. So I dumped strength. I got my constitution up a little bit. My wisdom was at 16 because that's going to be used for a lot of your spells. And then I dumped charisma and I went into intelligence to help with my intelligence saving throws. If you want to go charisma to help out with your like deception checks and stuff, you can do that as well. But I didn't find it as useful as getting my intelligence leveled out to 0. And actually, before we move on, I just want to say the reason I'm going 17 dexterity right now is because I'm going to use ability improvement at level 4 to get it to 19. And then you'll want to go for the hag's hair and you can get that to 20 pretty early on. So that's my reasoning behind going 17 dexterity off the bat. And then for your skills, you're going to be able to choose 3. For these, I chose athletics to kind of offset that. That's going to help you resist being shoved. It's at a -1, so I wanted to get that out of there, get it up to a +1. And then I think the most beneficial for you would be perception and survival, just to be able to spot hidden buttons and all that and hidden chests. I think that's probably the best option to choose. All right, once you hit level 2, this is where you're going to get your first 2 spells. For this, I would absolutely choose ensnaring strike because of the bounty hunter passive bonus that we chose. And for your second one, you kind of have a couple options. You could go fog cloud. That'll help you blind enemies and sneak around a bit. Also help you with stealing things. So that's a good option. There's also hunter's mark. So this will give you extra damage every time you hit an enemy. It's also concentration, but that only uses a bonus action. So that's also a good one. And then the third one I would suggest is enhanced leap. That is especially useful if you're playing as an archer. That'll help you move around on rooftops and stay out of reach. But you'll be able to choose another one through the next couple levels anyways. So what I chose was fog cloud. And this is where you're going to choose your fighting style as well. And since I did the dual wielding, I went to weapon fighting. So it lets me add my ability modifier to the damage of my offhand attacks. And obviously if you're going archery, you'll want this one. This will give you a +2 bonus to your ranged weapon attacks. Okay, when you move on to level 3, this is where you're going to choose your subclass. And obviously from the title of the video, you came here for the Gloomstalker. So what that's going to give you is Dread Ambusher. That's going to give you a +3 to your initiative. And then on the first turn of combat, your movement speed will be increased by 10 feet. And you'll get an extra attack that doesn't use any economy whatsoever. No action, no bonus action. And it'll deal extra damage. You'll also get superior dark vision. So you get that dark vision up to 80 feet. And then you'll get 2 actions, Dread Ambusher, Hide. So you can use Hide as a bonus action instead of an action. And I find that this works particularly well on ranged builds, as you just use your action to shoot, and then you can hide and move to a different location, and they will not know where you are. It can work on the melee build as well, but since we're going dual wield, we'll be using that bonus action for another hit. But you could always forego the second attack and hit him with a sneak attack or something, and then use hide to get out of there. Our next action is Umbral Shroud. So this is basically invisibility, but it only works if you're obscured. So you need to be hiding in shadows. You need to either be lightly obscured or heavily obscured. If you're crouched and you're hovering over an area, it'll tell you whether it's obscured or not. And I use this a lot of the time when I'm stealing stuff from merchants, or if you just want to get closer to an enemy to do a sneak attack or get the surprise bonus. And then finally, you'll get Disguise Self, which according to the wiki, after patch 5 can be used to escape each prison once per character by waiting until the fugitive condition ends and then either reverting back to your original character if you're already disguised, or disguising yourself if you were your original character when you got arrested. So I haven't actually tried that, but that's what the wiki's saying. So that actually would be extremely useful if you get caught stealing. And then this is where you're going to choose another spell. Here's your option to choose one of the ones you didn't choose before. Okay, level 4 is an important one. Obviously you can replace a spell if you change your mind about one of them, but then this is where you're going to choose your first feat. And like I mentioned earlier in the video, I chose ability improvement first to get dexterity to 19. And then I used the Hag's Hair to get it to 20, which is a massive buff, especially in the early game in Act 1. So that was the route I took. Some other good options. Dual Wielder's kind of an option. I never ended up using that. I didn't think I needed it. It's going to let you dual wield rapiers, I believe. Sharpshooter's an amazing one for the ranged build. I would save that for later on, just because of the penalty to your attack rolls. Earlier on in the game, you're going to be missing a lot because of that. So I would wait till you're able to offset that later on. And then for the melee one, we have Savage Attacker. This is going to help you deal out more damage and make better use of your crits and whatnot. So it's going to roll your damage die twice and use the highest result. And that'll actually work on every single instance of damage that you do. So if you have an item that adds like 1d4, I don't know, acid damage or something like that, it'll roll that twice as well and use the higher one. So you get a lot of value out of this. But again, like I said, I think the best route for this is going dexterity 19 with ability improvement and then getting that Hag's Hair to get it up to 20. That'll just help either way, whether you're going melee or ranged, because both of those will scale off your dexterity. Okay, now this is where we're at level 5. This is where you get your extra attack. So now you're going to have an extra attack every turn. You'll choose a level 2 spell. And for this one, I would recommend Pass Without Trace if you're trying to go stealthy all the time. That's what I chose. Another good one would be Spike Growth, just because of how good the spell itself is, holding off choke points and whatnot. But the Pass Without Trace is really going to make it so you're not going to fail very many stealth checks at all. Plus 10 bonus is pretty huge, and it lasts until a long rest. Just keep in mind that it is a concentration spell, so if you're trying to go for Ensnaring Strike, it's going to end this effect. And then you're going to move on to level 6, and this is where you're going to dip into your other class. You want to go 5 into Ranger, and then that's where you're going to want to go into Rogue for your 6th level, which grants you Sneak Attack, which deals extra damage to a foe you have advantage against. So that'll add 1d6 slashing damage. This will scale up as you add more levels into Rogue as well. I think it's every 2 levels adds another die of damage. Also works if you have an ally within 5 feet of the target and you don't have disadvantage. So that's going to come in handy a lot. And then there's also the range version, so this works well for melee and ranged. Then you'll apply skill proficiencies, which is going to double your proficiency bonus for those chosen skills. I would highly recommend going into Sleight of Hand and Stealth, because both of those are extremely beneficial for this multi-class build. Level 7 is going to be your 2nd level into Rogue, and it's going to give you 3 different actions. It's basically a bonus action version of a lot of the normal actions that you get. So you'll be able to hide as your bonus action, which you already had from your Gloomstalker subclass. Then there's the dash as a bonus bonus action, which can be useful, and disengage is a bonus action. That's just going to kind of help you get around the battlefield a little easier if you need to use that in an emergency situation or whatever. Okay, and then level 8, Rogue level 3 is very, very important. This is where you choose your subclass. Thief is a good option, but I think Assassin just provides a lot more for what we're going for here. This gives you 3 subclass features. First one is Initiative. You're deadliest against unprepared enemies. In combat, you have advantage on attack rolls against creatures that haven't taken a turn yet. And because of your already high initiative, you get that +3 from the Gloomstalker subclass. And then if you chose an Alert as a feat, you get that +5 as well. So you're pretty much going to be going first every single time. So that gives you advantage on your first round of combat against every creature you attack. And with the amount of attacks you're dealing per turn, it's very, very useful. Second is Ambush. So any successful attack roll against a surprise creature is a critical hit. So surprise, they're already missing their first turn of combat, and then every attack you do is a critical hit. And with the amount of attacks you're doing, like I said, that's going to be extremely powerful. And then you have Assassin's Alacrity. So quick as an alley cat in a rain dark city, you immediately restore your action and bonus action at the start of combat. So when you sneak up to an enemy and you, especially as a dual wielder, if you use your action and bonus action to attack, it's going to restore it after that. So you can essentially kill somebody right off the bat and then get all of your economy back. So all 3 of these subclass features combined just works really well with the Gloomstalker subclass, and that's why we chose Assassin over Thief. Okay, tab level 9, I would go one more into your Rogue just to get another feat. And I forgot to mention earlier, you definitely want to consider Alert as well, because you get that +5 to initiative and you can't be surprised. That's a pretty big one for this multi-class. I didn't actually go that route, and I don't think that I'm missing out on too much. I've been going first, I think, in every single round of combat that I've done so far. There may be one that I didn't go first, but I think it's been every single one. But not being surprised definitely helps a ton as well. So that's certainly an option. This is probably where you're going to want to choose Sharpshooter if you're going the ranged route, and then the melee route, Savage Attacker. But again, either way, Alert is a good option as well. Again, though, I still think, in my opinion, that ability improvement is the most beneficial for you if you can get the Hag's Hair. If you can't get the Hag's Hair, then maybe the other ones are better. But I think getting the Hag's Hair and getting Dexterity to 20 is just such a big jump that it's too good not to do. I'll just go Savage Attacker for the purpose of this video. That's what I chose in my playthrough. Okay, once you hit level 11, or level 10, sorry, this is where you're going to dip into the fighter class. So the reason we're doing this partially is because you're getting another fighting style. So this is where you can choose archery as your second one if you didn't choose it before. Or if you want to just stay with melee the whole time, you could go defense and get a +1 armor class to your armor. That's definitely beneficial. But going archery is going to give you the option to kind of switch between the 2 styles that we discussed in the beginning. As long as you've been getting gear along the way, you could really just select archer here and just switch between the 2 options whenever. So that's what I did. I chose archery. I'll accept. And then we'll move on to level 2 fighter. And this is the reason we went to fighter in the first place. You get action surge, which is going to give you another action to use. And that's going to refresh on a short rest. So that's just going to give you an extra attack to use in a combat encounter once per short rest. And then for your final level, what I did was go into fighter for the 3rd level, and I chose champion, which will reduce the number you need to roll a crit by 1, and that stacks. So along with the gear we're choosing, that's going to reduce it down quite a bit, and it's going to make you hit crits a lot more often. But Battle Master is also an amazing option just for the maneuvers that you can get. So really, I don't think you can go wrong either way. I don't know, Battle Master might be the stronger option, but for what I was trying to go for with the crits, I chose champion, and it's worked out pretty well. And again, I didn't go Battle Master, but looking at the maneuvers, the ones I would probably recommend would be Disarming Attack. So that'll give you additional 1d8 damage and possibly forces them to drop their weapon, which is pretty huge. That makes a lot of fights a lot easier. Riposte, I think that's how you say it. Basically, when someone misses, you can counterattack with an attack that adds 1d8 damage to your existing damage, and that's just going to cost you a superiority die and a reaction, which is pretty good economy-wise. And then Trip Attack, that'll do an additional 1d8 damage and knock them prone, which gives you advantage on attacks. So that's pretty huge as well. Okay, the next section's slightly spoilery, so I'm going to go over the best Tadpole powers for this multi-class build. So if you don't want to see those, or if you don't know what happens later on in the story regarding that, now's your chance to click away. Okay, so some standouts for this are favorable beginnings. Your first attack roll or ability check against any target gets a bonus equal to your proficiency bonus. That's a really good one for this one. Luck of the Far Realms, once per long rest, you can change a successful attack roll against a foe into a critical hit. Also amazing. If you're non-honor mode, Perilous Stakes is really, really good. You'll make them heal every time they attack, but they'll take double damage from all damage. So you can kill them pretty quickly with that, and it's a bonus action. And the other standout I would say is probably Cold a Week, and this is toggleable. When you bring a creature down to fewer hit points than your number of evolved illithid powers, it dies, and all nearby creatures take 1 to 4 psychic damage. So the more powers you have, the better this will be. Right here, I've got 15, I think, powers. So as long as they go under 15 health, they'll instantly die. and all creatures nearby will take 1 to 4 psychic damage. Okay, now we're gonna go over the gear. First, I'll go over the Act 1 stuff. You don't necessarily have to use every single thing I list here. I kind of give you some options on certain types of gear. This multi-class build's super powerful, so even in honor mode, you don't have to use a super specific set of gear. You can kind of interchange things if you want to. So the first thing's the Deathstalker Mantle. You'll get this if you play the Dark Urge Origin, and I think it's guaranteed that you get it, but I'm not gonna spoil anything for that. Once per turn when you kill an enemy, you'll become invisible for 2 turns, and you can probably do that almost every turn, and the invisibility is gonna give you advantage on attacks and disadvantage on being attacked, so that's super strong. I would probably carry that all the way through Act 3 as well. And then for weapons, the first thing is the Hunter's Dagger. It's a good +1 dagger. On a hit, they have to succeed a DC 13 Constitution saving throw, or they'll be ruptured, which will cause them to take extra piercing damage when they move. Hunter's Dagger is found from Ruum Moonglow in the Shattered Sanctum. The Short Sword of First Blood. This will give you an additional 1d8 piercing damage to targets that still have all their hit points. So with this build, you're usually going to be trying to go first anyway, or sneak attacking enemies, so they'll usually be at full hit points. That just helps you burst them down quicker, and that's kind of the point of this build anyway. So found on a Deep Gnome corpse in the Underdark by the Decrepit Village. Knife of the Undermountain King. This one reduces the number you need to roll critical hit by 1, so you can roll a 19 or 20 to get a crit. And then when you roll 2 damage or less, you re-roll the dice, taking the highest result. This actually works with ranged attacks and spells as well, as long as you have this equipped. And then Shadow Blade, you get advantage on attack rolls against lightly or heavily obscured targets when using the blade. That part's just whatever, but can be bought or looted from a Jackney or Jira in the Kresh. That's the shopkeeper in the Kresh. Then the Susser Dagger. This is another one I would carry all the way through. Knife of the Undermountain King, actually, you could probably do that as well, but there are better options. Susser Dagger, I would carry all the way through just for certain combat encounters. So you do the quest to finish the Masterwork weapon to get this. This silences whoever you hit with it, so that'll make them not able to cast spells with a verbal component. So it's really good against strong spellcasters. And then for your ranged option, for the melee build, I would say, is the Bow of Awareness. This gives you a +1 to your initiative rolls, and it's a +1 bow, so it's pretty decent. You can get that from Ruum Moonglow as well. And then we have the Haste Helm. This is something I used all the way through Acts 1 and 2 until I got a better option at Act 3. So this will give you momentum for 3 turns at the start of combat, which lets you move an extra 5 feet per remaining turn of this effect. So that's like an extra 15 feet at the start of combat. So that's huge with your dual wielding. Each turn you'll be able to get to your targets pretty easily. The Spider Silk Armor, you can get that from Minthara, whether you recruit her or she drops it in the Shattered Sanctum. So what this will do is give you a +1 to stealth checks, and then advantage on Constitution saving throws. Okay, for gloves, the Gloves of Power are really good. This basically affects them with Absolute's Bane, so they'll get a 1d4 penalty to their attack rolls and saving throws when you hit them, and then you get a +1 to your sleight of hand. So this is looted from the Goblin Boss in front of the Druid Grove, pretty much guaranteed to get that. Gloves of the Growling Underdog is also a good option, so this will give you advantage on melee attack rolls when you're surrounded by 2 or more foes. That's going to happen a lot. You can find that on Jor Ragslin's treasure crates in the Shattered Sanctum, and then also give you a strength of +1 to your saving throws. Gloves of Archery, I would run on both your ranged, if you're going to go the ranged route, or if you're going to go the melee route, I would keep these on hand in case you do need to shoot your bow once in a while. It's going to give you proficiency with those bows, which you're already going to have anyway, but it's going to give you an additional 2 damage on all your ranged attacks. And then you can get that from Grat the Trader in the Goblin Camp. Then the Gloves of Thievery, I would definitely recommend keeping all the way through all 3 acts, whether you're going the ranged route or the melee route. You're going to use these to steal things. It's going to give you advantage on all sleight of hand checks, so you're going to roll 2 dice, use the higher value. You can buy it from Brem in the Zentrum hideout after you complete the Finding the Missing Shipment quest for him. Smuggler's Ring, another thing I would carry through just to help you put it on when you're going to steal stuff. That'll give you a +2 stealth, +2 sleight of hand, and -1 charisma, but you're only going to be equipping it once in a while. Looted from a skeleton near the Broken Bridge section at the Risen Road. And then the Caustic Band is a really good one. This will add 2 acid damage to your weapon attacks. I would actually probably use that up until Act 3 when you get better options. Sold by Dareth Bonecloak in the Myconid Colony. And then Crusher's Ring. This gives you an extra 10 feet of movement speed. You'll get that from Crusher in the Goblin Camp. All right, now amulets. There's only one I recommend from Act 1. I mean, I'm sure there's other options, but this is the one I thought was the best. Amulet of Misty Step just gives you Misty Step. You'll find that in a gilded chest next to the bed behind Pulma in the Defiled Temple, or I can spawn in Amulim's trading inventory apparently now. Then you have Boots of Genial Striding. It's gonna make it so your movement speed isn't unimpeded by difficult terrain. You can get that from Blurg in the Myconid Colony. And then these are the boots I would ultimately go for, and I would recommend running these probably until Act 3 as well, maybe even the whole game. Disintegrating Nightwalkers. So this will give you Misty Step once per short rest, and then you can't be enwebbed, entangled, or ensnared, and you can't slip on grease or ice, so that's a huge one. That's worn by Nair, the dude you fight in the Grimforge. And then if you're gonna go the hand crossbow route, this is the best you're gonna get, is the hand crossbow +1. And there's multiple I think you can get. Dareth Bonecloak in the Myconid Colony and Damon in the Hollow. That's about as good as it gets for those at this point. And then if you are gonna go the pure ranged route, this is definitely what I would recommend. There's nothing really better than this. Titan String Bow. It does 1d8 +1 plus your dexterity modifier piercing damage, and then it deals additional damage equal to your strength modifier. So in the beginning, remember I said you take points out of strength because you won't need it. Well, you can still do that because of, well, let let me tell you where to get this from first. Bram in the Zentrim hideout or land Tarv on the main floor of Moonrise Towers. That's an Act 2 though. This is what you're gonna want to run with that. This will set your strength to 19 just by having it on you. You're pretty much using that just to buff your Titan string bow, but yeah, worth it. Found by breaking the Stool of Giant Hill Strength on the highest floor of the Arcane Tower with Bernard. So that's in the Underdark. And then with that, I would run the Adamantine Shield. When a melee attack misses you, the attacker is sent reeling for 2 turns. You get Shield Bash, and then attackers can't land critical hits on you. And then it gives you +2 to your armor class as well. So yeah, you'll get that in the Adamantine Forge. I think everybody knows where to get that. And then if you're going ranged, maybe run the Adamantine Scale Mail. Again, I didn't go the ranged route, so that'll give you reduced all incoming damage by 1. When a melee attack hits you, the attacker is sent reeling for 2 turns. No crits on the wearer, disadvantage on stealth checks, but if you're going ranged, you probably won't really need that as much anyway. And then for the final set of gear, probably run this on the ranged build. You could run it on the melee build too, but the haste helm I think is better for that. Is the Shadow of Menzo Baronzen. This lets you become invisible for 2 turns. It's like giving you the invisibility spell. And then you'll get that from the Pale Corpse and the Myconid colony in the secret area. You have to do a quest for that. All right, next we're gonna move on to our Act 2 gear. First, we'll start off with the Render of Mind and Body. This is a short sword +1. When you attack with advantage, you'll deal an additional 1d8 psychic damage. That's like the least resisted damage type in the game, so that's a good one. And then you'll pretty much always be attacking with advantage, so you'll be getting this quite a bit. It's sold by Lontarv in the main floor of Moonrise Towers. Justice R Scimitar's next. This is a +2, and if you attack with advantage, you'll have a chance to blind your target. That'll give you advantage on all your attacks against that target. They'll have disadvantage on their attack rolls, and then their ranged attacks can only go about 10 feet, so that's a pretty good one. It also gives you Shadow Soaked Blow, which is a special attack, which will add your proficiency bonus to the damage, and if the attack hits, it deals an additional 1d6 psychic damage, and it doesn't break concealment. And then for your melee build, I would recommend running the Darkfire Shortbow. Actually, you could run this with a ranged build too. It's pretty good overall. So this is sold by Damon in the Last Light Inn. It's a +2, gives you 2 resistances, both the fire and cold, and you get haste spell, which you can use once per long rest. That'll help you burst down a couple targets pretty quickly in the beginning of combat. Then if you're going the hand crossbow route, this is where you're gonna get some better options. You get the Hellfire hand crossbow, and you can get this from your gear in the Gauntlet of Shar. So this is a +2 hand crossbow. You can inflict burning while attacking while you're hiding or invisible. Gives you Scorching Ray once per short rest, and yeah, about as good as it gets for hand crossbows for the rest of the game. Other than this one as well, the Near Misser. So this one's a +1, but it does force damage instead of normal piercing damage, and it'll also give you Magic Missile once per short rest. That's sold by Roa Moonglow in the Moonrise Towers. Okay, and then if you didn't go the Dark Urge route, this is where you're gonna get a better cloak. The Cloak of Protection gives you +1 to your armor class and +1 to saving throws, so that's pretty decent. And then you can purchase that from Quartermaster Tali at the Last Light Inn. For armor, the Yuan-Ti Scale Mail is really good. This is a 15 armor class, medium armor, and it adds your full dexterity modifier to your armor class. Normally, it only adds half, I think, for medium armor. Additionally, this armor does not impose disadvantage on stealth ability checks, and then you get a +1 to your initiative rolls, so that's good for this class. And then that one you'll get from Quartermaster Tali in the Last Light Inn. For gloves, we've got the Flawed Helldust gloves. So you get these from Damon in Last Light Inn. If you give him an Infernal Iron, he'll give you this. So they'll grant you 1d4 extra fire damage to your weapon attacks, and then your unarmed attacks get additional damage, but you're not going to be unarmed. And then you also get +1 to your strength saving throws. Okay, after that is the Dark Justice R's Gauntlets. This is the green version. There's actually 2 different versions. I'll go over the other one in a second. This gives you Umbral Attack, where your weapon attacks deal an additional 1d4 necrotic damage, and then you get the strength saving throws +1. You get that on a pile of boxes in the Gauntlet of Shar, near that demon guy where you get the Hellfire crossbow. And then the blue version, you'll get these from, spoilers, Killing Night Song. So these do the same thing, 1d4 extra necrotic damage, and then the strength saving throws +1, but then you'll also get Beckoning Darkness. It's a level 4 spell you can cast as a bonus action. And what that's going to do, it's going to make the target take 2d8 necrotic damage if it enters or starts its turn in a lightly or heavily obscured area. Okay, for Amulet is the Surgeon Subjugation Amulet. This thing's insanely overpowered. I would carry this all the way to the end of the game. This gives you Paralyzing Critical. When you score a crit hit on a humanoid, you can choose to paralyze the target for 2 turns, recharges on a long rest. When they're paralyzed, they fail all strength and dexterity saving throws. Any attack rolls against them have advantage, and then any attack roll made against this creature within 10 feet is an automatic critical hit. Use that on a boss enemy and it's GG's. Yeah, definitely carry that through the end game, my recommendation. That's worn by Malice Thorn at the House of Healing. Killer Sweetheart's another good ring. This one is gonna give you Executioner. When you kill a creature, your next attack roll will be a critical hit, and then that refreshes once per long rest. But that's a good way to get a crit when you need it. Found lying on the ground where the shadowy copy of the player's character died in the self-same trial inside the Gauntlet of Shar. Shifting Corpus Ring's another good one. This one I'd probably run, well, you can run on another build, I guess, too. The other options I think are better, but still a good one. Gives you invisibility and blur. And this is dropped by Flaming Fist Margus at the last light in. And then the Dark Justice R helmet. This is a medium armor helmet. It's going to give you a +1 to saving throws against spells. While obscured, the number you need to roll a critical hit is reduced by 1, and that can stack with your other items like the Knife of the Mountain King, so you can roll an 18, 19, or 20 if you have both those. And then Constitution saving throws +1. That's found inside a gilded chest inside the Gauntlet of Shar. So that's what I'd recommend running, but there is the option of the Covert Cowl as well. So when you're obscured, the number you need to roll a critical hit while attacking is reduced by 1, and that can also stack. And then you get +1 to dexterity saving throws, and that's a light armor. That's carried by a mean-lock creature in the cellar of Last Light In. Alright, for our Act 3 gear, we'll go over the weapons first. The first thing I'd recommend is the Bloodthirst. This is dropped from defeating Orin. The number you need to roll a critical hit is reduced by 1, which can stack, which is super good. Gives you True Strike, which you can use as a cantrip once per short rest, and a bonus action. Kind of mid. Don't really care about that. It's a bound weapon, so it can't be knocked out of your hand, and when you throw it, it returns to you, but you're not going to be throwing anyway. When it's in your main hand, you're going to want to run this in the main hand, by the way. This gives you Exploit Weakness, so creatures hit with this weapon receive vulnerability to piercing damage, which is going to double all of your piercing damage, and this is piercing damage. So offhand, when they miss with a melee attack, you may retaliate and gain True Strike. That's still pretty good, but you definitely want that vulnerability to piercing damage, and also increase your armor class +1 in the offhand. Your other option is the Crimson Mischief. This is another one you're going to want to run in your main hand as well, also dropped by Orin. This will give you an additional 1d4 piercing damage against targets with 50% of their hit points or fewer. When you make an attack with advantage, the target take an additional 7 piercing damage. That's pretty much every time anyway. And that's for main hand only. And then for offhand, when you make an attack with your offhand weapon, you add your ability modifier to the damage of the attack, but that doesn't stack with 2 weapon fighting, which is what you're going to grab if you're dueling anyway, so that's kind of useless. For your ranged options, the Dead Shot's really good. It's a +2 bow. It's going to give you improved critical, which just reduces the number you need to roll a crit by 1, which can also stack. So again, you can run that with all the other things and get your crits down to like 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 type of thing. Keen Attack, you double your proficiency bonus when rolling ranged attacks with this weapon unless they have disadvantage, so that gives you a decent amount more damage. That's sold by Fitz the Firecracker at the Stormshore Armory in the Lower City. Then you have the Vicious Short Bow. So this is a +2 bow, and it gives you Dolor Amorous. When you land a critical hit with any weapon attack, it deals an additional 7 damage. So we're going for crits with this, and that just helps it even further. That's sold by Echo of Abazengal in the Murder Tribunal if you accept Ball and become an Unholy Assassin. So you might not be able to get that anyway. And then next is the Gaunter Mail. I'm probably saying that wrong, but this thing's extremely powerful. It's a +3 bow, probably arguably the best bow in the game. It's going to give you Promise Victory. On a hit, you'll inflict Guiding Bolt upon the target, which will give you advantage on your next attack, or anybody who attacks them next. And then it gives you Glowing. It shines with a glowing light of within 20 feet. You can toggle that on and off. And Celestial Haste, which is a better version of Haste. We can use that once per short rest. So this gives you Hastened for 5 turns, but you don't suffer lethargic when it ends. And that's +2 to armor class and advantage on dexterity saving throws. Your movement speed will be doubled, and you get an additional action. So that's huge. Super good. Looted from the Steel Watcher Titan in the basement of the Steel Watch Foundry. There's Sovrok's Horned Helmet, which you can get from looting him during Act 3. It's a medium armor. It gives you Deathbringer Sight. You get Dark Vision up to 10 feet or 50 feet if you already have Dark Vision. The number you need to roll a crit is reduced by 1, which can stack. And then you can't be frightened, and you can't be afflicted with other emotion-altering conditions. So that's a solid one. There's also the Helldusk Helmet, which I recommend for the melee build. So this will let you see in magical and ordinary darkness up to a range of 40 feet, and you cannot be blinded, so that runs really well with the darkness spell. It also gives you a +2 bonus to saving throws against spells, and attackers can't land crits on the wearer. And then you get Immolating Gaze, sear and frighten a target with nothing but your glow. You deal an additional 2d8 fire damage against burning creatures. And you'll get that in a vault in the House of Hope. Next is the Cloak of Displacement. So this will give you displacement at the beginning of the wearer's turn. The cloak activates, granting enemies disadvantage on attack rolls that target the wearer, and that lasts until you take damage. So they'll roll 2 dice and use the lower value. And if you already have a really high armor class, then GG's. They're not going to be hitting you very often. This is in Act 3. You'll get it from the trader and Thorold Danthalon and Danthalon's Dancing Axe in Worm's Crossing. And again, that works every single turn. Next for the armor is the ballast armor. So you don't necessarily always have the option for this, but this is sold by Echo of Abazagal in the Murder Tribunal if you accept Ball and become an unholy assassin. So this is a 14 armor class, light armor. Gives you Aura of Murder. Enemies within 6.5 feet become vulnerable to piercing damage unless they're resistant or immune to it, and then you get a +2 to your initiative rolls. So that's very, very strong in both cases. Next is the Armor of Agility. This is a 17 armor class, medium armor. Exotic material. Add your full dexterity modifier to your armor class. Additionally, this armor does not impose disadvantage on stealth ability checks, and then you get +2 to your saving throws. Adding your whole dexterity modifier, which is probably +5 to 17. That's a 22 armor class. And then that's sold by Gloomy Fentinson in the Stormshore Armory. Okay, for gloves, we have the Helldusk gloves. So these will give you a +1 bonus to spell attack rolls and spell save DC. Your weapon attacks will deal an additional 1d6 fire damage, and then the unarmed part of it doesn't really matter. You get strength saving throws +1, and you'll get Rays of Fire cantrip that you can use once per short rest. It's like Scorching Ray, basically. Legacy of the Masters is a really good pair of gloves too. This gives you a +2 bonus to all attack roll and damage rolls with weapons, and then it gives you strength saving throws +1. That's sold by Damon at Forges of the Nine in Lower City. You could run that one on the ranged or the melee. Up next is the Helldusk boots, and these are probably the best boots that you can run. So they're going to give you Steadfast, which you can't be forcibly moved by a foe's spells or actions, and you ignore the effects of difficult terrain. Infernal Invasion, when you fail a saving throw, you may use your reaction to succeed instead, which is crazy. And then you get Hellcrawler, which is like Misty Step, but you deal 2d8 fire damage wherever you land, and that's a 10-foot radius, so that's huge. It's so good. That's found in a locked guild chest on the top floor of Worms Rock Fortress and Worms Crossing. And then for our last piece of gear, Elegant Studded Leather. I probably should have put this with the other armors, but this is light armor that gives you 14 armor class. It gives you Ambusher, which is a +2 to your initiative rolls, advantage on stealth checks, and then you'll get Shield that you can cast as a level 1 spell once per short rest. Probably already know what it does. Increase your armor class by 5. Use this as a reaction, and then you'll take no damage from magic missile, and that'll last till your next turn. And then that's found in a high security vault inside the big vault at the back of the room at the counting house in the Lower City. All right, so I want to show you guys a quick combat example in Act 3 of how this multi-class build typically plays out. So usually you're going to want to start out combat with a surprise round by sneaking and attacking unsuspecting enemies. With that said, you're going to want to toggle on sneak attack in the reactions page. And the reason you do that is because your sneak attack action itself only uses the action, and then combat will start. So you'll want to open up with your main hand attack, which will allow you to use your bonus action as well. And then your assassin subclass will refresh both of those, and you can apply your sneak attack to like your bonus action. So you can get all 3 of those and then refresh. So it just gives you a little more damage to open up with. Now keep in mind, this isn't like the full true potential of this multi-class build because I'm playing as my Dragonborn character that was respec from Sorcerer, just to show you guys this stuff in this video, and my gear isn't the very best you can possibly get, and then I'm not getting the extra crit damage from being a half-orc. So we'll open up with our main hand attack, and you'll want to have dual wielding toggled on for this to work too. So attack there. They're mad I'm attacking, yada yada. Don't react. Then my bonus action goes off. Then I can apply my sneak attack there. And boom, extra damage. There goes 68 HP. And that was 2 attacks so far. So I'll toggle off my dual wielding now so I don't overkill anything. Here's my 3rd attack. Everything in a surprise round is a crit guaranteed too, so I'm not using my Luck of the Far Realms. There's 3 attacks. 4 attacks. Then I have my bonus action. 5 attacks. Dread Ambusher is 6 attacks. Then I can use Action Surge potentially. So that'll give me another attack here. 7. And attack again. That's 8. And then I'll end turn. And if you have haste, that's even better. You'll get a few more attacks. Unless you're in honor mode, you'll get 1 extra attack, which still helps a ton. So I'll end turn there. And they're surprised, so there they go. They lose their combat for that turn. And then I can attack again. This is when you'd probably want to use Luck of the Far Realms if you're trying to get as much out as possible. And then bonus action. She's gone. And that's about it for as much you can do. See, keep in mind, that's 1 character, and typically you'd have a party of 4, so they'd all get extra attacks during the surprise round too. And that's what, 68 plus 54 plus 68 plus 54 plus 68 HP. That's like, what, 190-ish, 290 something damage just from 1 character. So yeah, this multi-class build does a ton of damage, and this isn't even the very best gear you can possibly get. That's about it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next one. See ya. Don't forget to subscribe.